Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Buried in Treasures, our learning community. We are in Chapter 7, Enhancing Motivation. My name is Dr. Crystal Sosha. I am joined by my colleague Earl Leach as well, who is usually your fearless leader, and we'll be taking turns on and off to get through some of these chapters with you all. So, again, we're in Chapter 7, All Things Motivation, which includes helping individuals to find and enhance their motivation to tackle a hoarding behavior, a cluttering behavior, decluttering, which includes recognizing the problem, finding ways to feel ready and confident to work on that problem, connecting to their goals and values, who they are as a person and who they want to be, and supporting them in boosting their motivation. Thank you again for joining. If you could, again, kindly mute yourself if you are not addressing the audience, that would be wonderful. I will do my best to mute as well. So again, welcome. Today's meeting is hosted by DBHR through the Washington State Healthcare Authority. This is an interactive meeting, and we do encourage you to ask questions and participate throughout this session. The slides and recording will be sent to you, and actually we will probably drop that in the chat at some point. If not, you will get an email soon. A note about artificial intelligence. Please note that the use of automated note-taking bots or similar tools during Washington FCS events or meetings requires prior approval. Unauthorized use of such tools is prohibited to ensure the privacy and confidentiality of all attendees. Also, any recording that is created through AI is not recognized as an official recording of this session, and we reserve the right to exit trainees from the training if they are using AI to take notes without prior approval or using AI to record the session. Again, a reminder about the materials. They will actually no longer be emailed to participants, so we will upload a PDF version of the PowerPoint into the chat towards the end of the webinar. The recording will be available to you all on the FCS channel on YouTube. So take a look and keep a lookout for that in the next 2 weeks. We are again in chapter 7, so a little more than halfway through our series. Again, we have already covered a little bit about hoarding, identifying if the person we're working with or yourself or a loved one has a problem, meeting some of the individuals that the textbook calls the bad guys and the good guys, but really those are the things that are contributing to hoarding behaviors, things that are supportive, things that might not be as effective. Also explored how did this happen? Where did this really come from? And now we are going to talk a little bit about the motivation piece. Before we do that, would love to hear from you all. First and foremost, if you could give us a yes or no if you were in our meeting last month in January in the chat. Yes or no if you were present. No worries if not. This is luckily not a pop quiz. This is just a getting a sense of who's been with us. You may have hopped around here and there. Okay. So awesome. Maybe you're going to watch the recording later. So from January's meeting, we explored how did this happen, which was an understanding specifically around hoarding for what it is. And we talked about, Earl had given a great lecture around the emotional, mental, and behavioral, as well as the social well-being of hoarding behaviors and understanding that. We also shared a resource with you that was that learning application, which included identifying and trying to discard items. So whether you tried it yourself or shared the worksheet with someone, it prompted you to discard items. So it asked for an easy item, a moderately difficult item, and a quite difficult item. Did anyone get a chance to try using that handout? If you did, how did it go? I'm going to see if I can also type the link into the chat.
Yeah, he's surprised.
Ooh, Jennifer says they were able to get rid of things in all three categories. Tell us how you were able to do that. Where is Carrie, I see you're unmuted. I wasn't sure if you were going to add something. Oh, okay. Anyone else while we're waiting for some responses? Hopefully that's the correct link. It may or may not be as I just hand typed it, but all of the worksheets should be accessible there. Earl, if you could let me know if that was correct. Justine said, I attempted to engage my client with this worksheet, but he was unable to participate. And that happens, I mean, really with any worksheet. What made it difficult to participate? Were there other things that were happening for this person? And I say I didn't tackle all the hard things at once, but let them trickle into the easy things, one thing at a time. Yeah. And it almost is really like a slow, gradually paced exposure. So if you can start with the easier, less distressing items, you can build your way up to the more difficult items. So that's really great to hear. Okay. For those of you who haven't tried the handout, have no fear. You'll get an opportunity at some point. There's so many wonderful worksheets there. Awesome. Thank you. So you'll be able to access all the worksheets, even for the ones that you've missed. But we will keep it moving. Today we're going to talk about, again, all things motivation, which includes understanding how insight and ambivalence can impact motivation to change. If someone is not quite ready to make a change, of course, they're not going to be motivated to make that change. Identify personal values and how hoarding influences these values. Describe how to test motivation through visualization exercises. And explain the value of making a contract with yourself. So we'll go through all of these pieces. So let's jump in. Motivation can be quite a tricky thing. How do you know when someone is motivated to do something?
For anyone? Yeah.
What tells you that someone is motivated to make a change? Actions and their words, yeah. They're telling you, asking for help, taking action, unhappiness and restlessness. So they've kind of reached this point in their life where it's time to make this change. They're able to verbalize it with you, no longer resistant, ambivalent, change language. Yeah, you're hearing that change talk. They reach out for support, guidance, their affect changes, feeling overwhelmed. They're talking about the steps they need to take, right? Because it's not as simple as waking up tomorrow and saying, I'm going to throw out every single item in my house that's getting in the way of my windows and my doors and my kitchen sink and my oven. It's just not that simple. Darn, yeah, I was thinking of darn cat when someone mentioned change talk. Darn, the desirability, reason, and need. Identifying reasons and motivations for change. Yeah. So someone needs this desire, needs to have the ability, there needs to be a reason, external motivators. Yeah, sometimes it does take external motivation. Sometimes for some individuals, they really struggle with the internal motivation. So sometimes it's helping someone to identify larger goals and will help them explore this specifically in the context of hoarding. So even highly motivated people reach a point where their motivation wavers. Think of yourself and your New Year's resolution or goal that you might have set. Again, even with the best intentions, other things come up, distract us, get in the way, other stressors, other priorities. Imagine maybe some of the people that you're working with, or even for yourself, if you are working on decluttering. Maybe one day you're feeling really motivated and you were able to toss 3 items, and the next day there's this kind of heaviness and sadness and stress and other life responsibilities that get in the way. So it's not as simple as continuing to be consistent, and motivation really fluctuates and wavers. We also want to help someone to recognize the problem between themselves and other people. So we'll take a look at this. We want to explore how accurate are your perceptions compared to others? What have other people in your life told you about their perceptions of your hoarding problem? So have others in your life mentioned, I've noticed that I can't get into your doorway safely, or I noticed that it's really hard to come over to your house because there's a lot of items there, or, I'm feeling really worried about you because there's so many items in your space, and I'm worried about your safety, or I'm worried about whatever it might be. Have they told you that you have a lot of clutter or just a little bit of clutter? Do they think that acquiring items is a problem for you? So, exploring how people in their lives have mentioned about their hoarding behaviors. And the last question is understanding, do you agree or disagree with what they say? Do you think that your acquiring is truly a problem? Do you agree with their perception? So sometimes individuals really have a misperception of their current behavior. And sometimes it does take, someone mentioned again that external motivator, sometimes it does take recognition from someone else. Although sometimes that frustrates someone even more. So when someone is actively telling you to do something, it might be more irritating to hear and might push you away, even further away from that goal. So there's a really great worksheet to help someone really identify this misperception about the clutter and maybe identifying if they even realized it was a misperception at the time. So here is a handout. These first 5 questions are for the person who has or might have a hoarding problem, and then the next 5 are for a friend or a family member. These screenshots might be a little bit small and blurry, but we will, again, if you click that link that I shared before, you will have access to all of them. So again, questions for the person with the behavior are on the left. Questions for friend, family, trusted person are on the right, and these are just 3 of those questions. So exploring with this person, and it doesn't necessarily have to be through, looking at this handout and checking it off. Some people find that helpful. So you might ask, because of the clutter or number of possessions in your home, how difficult is it for you to use the rooms on a scale of 0 being not difficult at all to 8 being extremely difficult? To what extent do you have difficulty discarding, recycling, selling, giving away ordinary things that other people would get rid of? Again, similar scale from 0 being no difficulty, 8 being extreme difficulty. To what extent do you currently have a problem with collecting free things or buying more things than you need or can use or can afford? And maybe this person tells you, um, let's say if they're at a 6, and it might be helpful to ask, okay, what makes you a 6 and not a 5? And helping to explore what is it about that number and that ranking that means so much to them. So if it's not, I see that question, if it's not known to anyone else, then we don't need to answer those questions just yet. Sometimes it is really building the insight independently for them on their own. If no one has ever been in their home or has noticed items in their home, or this person maybe doesn't let anyone into their home or space either, this could be an observation from yourself. A lot of this in our earlier sessions, we talked about how important it is to build a relationship with someone and to not shame or blame them for their behaviors. But a lot of it takes quite a bit of time to really find kind of the balance between approaching a conversation versus not going into that far end of shaming that behavior. So if no one has ever been in their home, we don't need to ask these questions on the right. Because of the clutter, how difficult it is it for this person to use the rooms? Maybe you're someone who is connecting with other people in this person's life, maybe not. So again, it could be very much on an individual basis if it's helpful to ask those questions. And sometimes, again, it can be quite challenging because this person, maybe themselves, isn't quite ready to broach conversations around this behavior. Give me just a moment. I think I have the incorrect PowerPoint up. Or do I not? Just a moment. My apologies. I think I was missing a slide here. Maybe not. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we are. My apologies. Okay, so we just again talked about this one and the handout. Just want to recognize the importance of being patient with some of this. So to the question that was asked, it can be so helpful to not only ask these questions, but think about the severity of the clutter in the space. Does it impact a person's safety? Is it becoming a risk to their health and well-being? Are they not passing inspections if they are in a housing setting that requires inspections? Maybe considering questions like, is the home fully usable? Are there rooms blocked? Are there safety risks like fire or easily tripping, falling, mold, perhaps? And if their daily functioning is affected. So some of this is the awareness of this. So again, if someone doesn't have another person in their life, or if someone themselves is struggling to build that awareness, some of your support may come in there. Awareness really is that first step to change. So having the insight into recognizing, yeah, I actually can't use the kitchen stove and I really want to cook. Others have told me that they don't want to come over, and I really want people to come over. Or maybe there's people who are feeling overwhelmed about the amount of clutter and they'd rather me come to their house instead. And at the end of it is again exploring with this person if they're experiencing shame. Do they sound defensive? Do they actually have a different perception? So with these handouts, use your best judgment with them. When we're following up to some of those misperceptions, this is where we are asking some of the hard questions, and this might feel uncomfortable for us, but it's so important to ask those tough questions. So, this helps the individual to move beyond that surface level awareness into really evaluating their beliefs and behaviors. So, do I view my possessions differently from how others view them? Sometimes people who engage in hoarding or cluttering behaviors often assign what we've talked about before, strong emotional content to objects. So, what are some of the things that you've heard someone say in terms of how they see their items or possessions in their home? I might need this someday. Yes. They might need it, can't afford to replace it, right? Another piece to consider is access. Will this person or does this person have the financial means to get something new? Grew up in the Depression, it's all I have. Right. It's really important to me. Victoria, go ahead.
I just had a client, we were working on this, and it was her and her partner of 19 years, and
Mhm.
he had a massive coronary like
Mm,
2 weeks ago. So
mm,
now everything has reverted back, and every single thing in that house, even a piece of trash, is this reminder to her again. So
mm,
we've reverted back. And now she feels if she gets rid of anything, then no one will ever remember, that he was a part of her life or that he existed.
mm. Yeah, and in some ways it sounds like she's keeping them alive too with these items. So not only will others might possibly forget, but what if she forgot? And what if she doesn't remember who this person is? And so it's tough, yeah, and that's so natural. Think about the stages of change. It's not as simple for someone to be in the action stage of change, actively committing to decluttering, removing items, getting rid of items, and then life happens and grief happens and the fear of what could happen to these items or who could remember them and this person become much more important. Thank you for that. I can fix that and sell it for XYZ amount. It's what proves I was alive. My experience has been the item is linked to a fond memory of someone or something, vacation or time in their life, right? So there's this perception of importance. It's necessary. I need to keep it. The emotional attachment might be very real. And sometimes that doesn't mean that inherently the item is valuable, although there is a strong emotional attachment. Do I overestimate the significance, value, or usefulness of objects? So sometimes you might hear someone, again, like we said, I might need this someday, or this is too important to lose, or getting rid of this would be wasteful. This represents a memory I just can't replace. I'll never have another memory like this. This person may have passed and is no longer here, or this person might have a memory from, again, yeah, travel another country, whatever it might be, it is connected to that memory. Yes, grief and loss is a major precipitating factor to sustaining or escalating hoarding behavior. Thanks for that, Earl. And that is just so true. And so sometimes it's helpful to think about how often has the item actually been used? Is the value realistic or imagined? Is the object replaceable? And sometimes those questions, again, they don't come up immediately, but it helps to challenge some of those beliefs around the assumptions. Has saving things to the extent that you currently do improve your life? So, how does engaging in cluttering behaviors, you don't need to say that, you can say, as it was worded here, how does saving things or how do your possessions improve your life? How do these items in your home improve your life? And so, that's a really powerful motivation question. It might tell you about the person's stress, more of their story, their relationships, their financial situation, their safety. Yeah, it is absolutely. Yeah, it's debilitating to the person who and the client who has health issues because they are very tied to those items in the home. And so it's really not as simple as saying get rid of them. And that's obviously not an approach that we would take, but it is finding ways to build rapport and ask the hard questions. The second part is going back to some of those chapters that Earl covered earlier on and asking the questions like how much of your life is restricted by your clutter or hoarding? And so helping this person to explore, are there things that they're not doing because of their clutter or hoarding? Again, maybe this person wants to get out of their house, or they want to cook, or they want to have people over, and their life is shrinking. It's getting smaller, really, because of their clutter or hoarding behavior. So asking them, can you cook in your kitchen? Can you sleep in your bed? Can you use your bathroom? Can you invite people over? Can you move safely through your home? Can you have, your friends over? Can you have a pet if that's allowed? Would it be hard for the pet to live in the home? So shifting from how much, like quote unquote, items and belongings and possessions to how much life is restricted, shrinking, becoming smaller. Okay. The other question to ask is how important is it to you to reclaim those parts of your life? So, connected to that grief and loss piece, a lot of it is grieving the person I used to be. I'm someone who also does work with individuals with eating disorders and disordered eating behavior and think about the times in which we hold on to the jeans that no longer fit. And this is something Earl has talked about too. We're holding on to the clothing, saying, I used to be this person who lived in a thin body and now those clothes don't fit, but it reminds me that I was that person and one day I'll fit into them again. It might remind this person of their independence of another time in their life. Maybe there was a period in their life where they weren't unhoused, and so it reminds them of a time where life was different. Maybe these items remind them of, again, family relationships, loved ones, maybe freedom. So maybe it is so important for them to reclaim some of those pieces of their life. And motivation really only happens when someone is connected to that change of what they personally care about. So it's often giving up something to make a change, letting go of something, which is another layer of grief and loss, to make change for something new. And then going back to the other part of our chapter 3 is revisiting the readiness to change. So, are you ready to change? So, this part reinforces that motivation is not static. You might ask this person, do you feel the same way? Has something shifted? Has your level of readiness changed since then? So, even with the example that was just shared, a person who might have underwent a death or a loss or any kind of grief, even non-death related grief and loss, might shift where this person is in terms of readiness. So even small increases in readiness are meaningful. We might not go back to where we were yesterday or last week, or before the event, or before the stress, or before the situation, but let's see how we can do something a little bit different. So here we're not trying to create shame. We're trying to help clarify what is it exactly and how is it exactly that we can make this change happen. What do you think is a question that you would like to ask someone regarding their possessions and their readiness to change or their motivation to change? Or what have you asked before?
Um, so I work primarily with people that have psychosis,
Mhm.
and one of my patients was hoarding.
Mhm.
And he was really distressed that there was like the things he was seeing was hiding within his hoard.
Mm.
And so a question that we asked to try and motivate change was like, what if we, what if the hoard wasn't here to hide behind?
Mm.
And that worked semi well
Hmm.
to get some motivational talk out of him.
Yeah. What an awesome question. Kind of really leaning into perhaps the symptoms or experiences that this person was facing at the time to actively connect some of that change. Really cool. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I see other examples. What would your life look like if you made that change? Yeah, kind of the miracle question approach. What does keeping this item fulfill for you emotionally? Is there another way we can access that feeling without keeping this item? Beautiful. Are your possessions reflective of who you are now or a different version of you? Do these possessions serve you now? Yeah. And you might ask again the perfectly worded question, and this person's like, yes, I still have to keep all of these things. There's no way that I have any thought of letting them go. And being okay with that answer too. So continuing to build motivation, continuing to build insight, and we'll talk about how that connects to their goals and values too. So we want to, oh, I see one more. Are these items something you can pass on to your family members, such as collections? Yes. So sometimes people we're in the helping profession, and the people we're working with are often big givers as well too. So there's some gratitude and some satisfaction in giving away an item to someone that might actually use it and might take care of it, and maybe there's a fondness for them in that item too. And that can be such a beautiful thing. So, yeah, great question. So, we want to help someone understand how hoarding and cluttering developed and how it progressed over time. And it's kind of helping them to tell their story and their narrative. So, the text outlines some of these questions to help someone explore what brought you to your current situation. So, the first question is, when did this problem begin? And you don't necessarily have to use the language problem. You can say, when did you start collecting items? When did you start acquiring possessions? When did you start saving? And maybe they really like books. When did you start saving books? I am a big thrifter and antique finder and estate sale visitor. And so for me, if I find something that I really love, I want 10 more of them every color. So sitting across from me, I have these Ellie Smith glass bunnies. I have pink ones, blue ones, green ones. So noticing that something really caught my eye. I really love bunnies and I wanted more of them. So for some people, saving behaviors may have started in childhood without even realizing. Maybe this person transitioned from, again, being or living in a home to being unhoused, maybe noticed acquiring more during that time. Maybe it began in adulthood. Maybe it happened after a death or loss. Maybe growing up without enough resources. So, again, the access to things. What's something that you all noticed is common for the people that you're working with or for yourselves? When did they start acquiring items, if you happen to know? Oh, yeah, after a traumatic event. That's pretty common for many people. Not wanting to let go of memories, or as a result, kind of creating and wanting to hold on to things. Yeah, so it's very different for every person, and it could be helpful to understand, when did it start? When did you realize that you started saving or collecting items? After forced long-term hospitalization resulting in loss of apartment. Yeah, wow. So sounds like an involuntary commitment. This person was unable to even probably take things with them at that point. Unexpected, no time to transfer, no time to store. All of my possessions are gone. And there's so much devastation in that. So, really, in many ways, validating that experience, like that is absolutely horrifying. You must be so devastated. Next, helping this person identify, when did it get out of control? So, hoarding usually builds up slowly. It may not feel like a serious problem at all at first. It might feel like, I said, a few bunnies. It might feel like a few books. It might feel like a couple extra piles of mail, extra few pieces of paper. And then things start to fill up the space, things become unusable. There's a significant amount of items, and daily life becomes harder. So, helping this person clarify, when did it get out of control? Or when did you start noticing you couldn't use the kitchen sink or the stove? I see it a lot in people who have been unhoused, especially people who had all of their belongings thrown away during a quote unquote camp clearing police action. Yeah, it's just so horrific. It really is. So it makes a lot of sense that someone wants to hold on to the things that they have now. The next question is asking, how have your family and friends, loved ones, anyone maybe who knows about this reacted? Maybe loved ones express concern, maybe neighbors or roommates express frustration and anger. Some might avoid visiting, or maybe a roommate demands cleaning, is telling other staff. However that looks, are there major life events or traumas associated with this? We just talked about that. So, again, events such as the death of a loved one, divorce, illness, hospitalization, financial hardship. I mean, really think about who the people you're working with are, or if this is yourself or a loved one, who they were before. What things have you lost out on because of cluttering or hoarding? So, again, this could be strained relationships because this person is no longer connecting to the friends that they used to connect with, or there's limited living space, or whatever it might look like. Again, missed opportunities, financial difficulties. They've spent so much money on buying items. Um, all of these things are important to consider. What have you tried to control it? How did that work out? So some people attempt to organize, promise to stop acquiring, discard items in moments of maybe motivation. They get this energy surge and we're ready to throw some things out. Maybe we do it and it's before trash day, so we go back and get it. So maybe it didn't necessarily work out, but helping them to identify, has there ever been a time where you were able to get rid of an item? How did that work? How were you able to do that? What worked and what didn't work? So asking someone to tell their story and then thinking of questions or considering questions that you might also ask could be helpful. Okay, ambivalence again is so important. How would you define ambivalence for someone with hoarding or cluttering behaviors? What does ambivalence look like? Not seeing any upsides to reducing clutter. Mhm. So maybe they're back to the uncertainty. They're not sure if this is even worth it. What's the point? It's not making a difference. I'm not really sure that I want to do this anymore. And ambivalence is so normal. Again, think about any change you are trying to make. Wanting a clear room, but not wanting to reduce items. Yeah, really stuck in that in between. I'm kind of on a seesaw. I'm teetering back and forth. And ambivalence really is so two-sided. So on one side, we know that everyone experiences it. And it is so especially common and likely to occur when people have conflicting needs, wants, and values. And on the other side, we face ambivalence head on and work through it. Think about with some of these exercises, which includes maybe your wish to clear the clutter and your reluctance to part with some of those things. So again, ambivalence is a normal part of change. A person might want to, again, as mentioned, reclaim that space and reduce their stress, but at the same time feels really attached emotionally to these items, their safety, their security, their comfort. And so it's so important to help this person recognize and kind of name where they're at and also point out the discrepancies. I'm noticing that you're mentioning you'd really love it if you could cook a little bit more, or you'd really love it if you had a spot on the couch to watch your favorite TV show. And I'm also hearing from you that it's really difficult to remove these items. What could we do about that? So help this person sit with both sides, help them explore both truths. Coming along with the ambivalence piece is now this balance of change scale. So, understanding the balance between reasons to change and reasons not to change. And it could be helpful to explore this with someone. So, you might prompt questions regarding asking about reasons to change, like what reasons matter to you most? What's important to you about making this change? How confident are you in making this change? How does your clutter interfere with your life and how you want to live? If you made some positive changes, what would be some outcomes that you might notice? So, some people want to change because clutter is hurting their social life. Friends can't come over. Their self-esteem is diminished. Maybe there's some shame and embarrassment. Friends and family argue about the hoarding. The clutter is not safe for this person again. Could be blocking doorways, exits, could be a fire hazard. I feel uncomfortable in my own home. I need to work on the problem to avoid legal problems, maybe getting kicked out of the apartment because it's unsafe. I might have a lot more money if I cut back on my acquiring. People would get off my back if I could improve the situation. What are some other reasons that people want to make that change? What are some of their reasons to change? Have their kids over for visits. Yeah. More room for activities. Playing in the room. Maybe there's living room space. There's a spot to sit on the couch. There's a little bit of TV space. Even think about backyards. If a person has a small backyard, oftentimes there's tools and items which make it difficult for someone to play. Reducing clutter reduces anxiety. Yeah. What else? Maybe ask the people that you're working with. So on the flip side, we think about the reasons not to change. Clutter is not hurting anyone. Oh, yeah, not having to face the consequences of failed inspections. Right. There's a likelihood that I will keep my place. Reasons not to change. Again, my clutter's not hurting anyone. Acquiring brings me joy, brings me pleasure. There's so much fun. Like we've got the serotonin and endorphin rush. Acknowledging the problem would make me feel bad. I don't want to face this truth. Nothing's worked before, so why bother trying? Working on the problem would be like giving in to those who nag me because they've been telling me all along that I should clean my place, and that means they win if they do that. I just don't have the time. I don't even have a second in the day to do this. I'm afraid that I will lose treasured possessions if I try discarding stuff. So, again, questions to ask, are these reasons based on fear, habit, or real obstacles? Which of these reasons could I address with a small, perhaps realistic step? It doesn't mean that I have to throw out every single item. It doesn't mean that I need to spend 8 hours a day decluttering and organizing and sorting and discarding. It could mean removing one item a day. So could I find a way to keep important memories without keeping everything? Could I perhaps take photos of the things that I have? Could I find a way to store them together in a box? Are there other ways to save these memories that doesn't mean that I'm removing them or forgetting about them? And then we have our return to balance of change scale. So, on one hand, again, we have the reasons to change. So, as we are recognizing and asking these questions, we'll help someone identify maybe some tips towards making that change and getting ready. And then there's also the other hand of the reasons not to change. So, that side is more tipping, literally tipping, towards not changing and not a high priority for this person. They need motivation to work. So one side is tipping towards, but maybe we're also providing tips to help change. And the other side is tipping against. They are not quite ready. They are more unmotivated than they are motivated. The likelihood of making any kind of change might be really low. So helping this person explore which way is your balance of change scale tipping? Do we have more on the reasons to change or the reasons not to change? And the amount actually on each side doesn't matter, but the quality of them does. So if we can connect to this person's goals and values, it might actually be more important than the quantity of the bullet points. So in order to do that, we want to help someone with a personal goals worksheet. And this might start with listing the things you value the most. And I find this so helpful in all of the work that we do. Start by having this person list all the things that are important, all the things that they value. It might be close family relationships, it might be independence, it might be I value having a stress-free life, it might be I value social connections, it might be I value, someone might say I value being clean and organized, helping this person to identify all the values, maybe finances, whatever it might be. And then having them identify personal goals, specifically as we're working through the Buried in Treasures program. Maybe this person tells you, I want to cook, I want to have a relationship with my friends and families, I want social services to leave me alone. They are sending me letter after letter threatening to evict me. My landlord is bothered, everyone's annoyed at me, and I just want them to stop. What are some of the goals that you or the individuals you're working with might have as it relates to decluttering. Why do we want to do this? So thinking about why these goals are important to you and this person or this person, how they connect to their values. Yeah, to retain housing. Right. Makes a lot of sense. And that's true for many people that perhaps I need to engage in some discarding or organizing so that I can keep this roof over my head. And then you help this person identify their goal. Ah, yeah, presenting a habitable living space for DCYF, trying to reunite with kids. Right, so there's again kind of that external motivator. Something else will be important for me. And so as you're helping this person identify their personal goal, as it connects to their value, you want to help them identify why do they want to beat hoarding? Why do they want to work on this big thing? Maybe, again, they're sick of the nagging phone calls and just don't like arguing with their family. They've got these personal motivations. They don't want these phone calls. There's arguments, there's feelings of shame. And so identifying these things makes it more real for this person. If I work up my hoarding problem or behavior or my cluttering, however, whatever language you want to use is okay, the following things might happen. So if I do this thing, what are the things that might happen? Well, maybe I'll be able to talk to my daughter. Maybe she'll be able to come over more. Maybe I'll have friends to stop by. Maybe the landlord will stop calling me. Maybe I'll have more money. I'll be able to find things more easily because I'm having a hard time finding where I put things. I'll be able to have more space. I'll be able to invite kids, friends, family. If I don't work on my hoarding problem or behavior, the following things might happen. Well, I might fall and hurt myself. I might isolate myself because I don't want to get out of my house. I'm afraid people are going to steal my items or someone's going to break in. I might go broke. I might lose all my money. I might get evicted. And so, thinking about how hoarding influences values and how it interferes, it can be important to think about, again, the benefits of making that change and the consequences of not changing. So, if I'm able to make this change, here's all the good things that might happen. If I stay the same or I don't do anything differently, here's all the other things that might happen. So, having this person really connect to finding some true meaning and value in what they're saying about the reasons for, and also pointing out the reasons against. What are some of the things? Oh, mobility in the home, yes. What are some of the things that the people that you're working with or yourself really values? And how do you see your values driving your current goals? For example, I am someone, oh, okay. I see an example. Big one I see is autonomy and choices. Yeah. The ability to make decisions, self-determination, having power and control. There's a lot of control that comes into hoarding and cluttering because we're able to be the person that decides how much or how little is in our space, what we choose, what we select, what we don't choose, what we don't pick up. But even think about, again, anyone else that you might be working with and the values that they have for themselves, even beyond hoarding and cluttering. No problem. See you. It might be important to really ask this person what they value because it might actually connect to even other goals beyond hoarding. So, taking some time to really reflect with this person. This handout has, again, it's kind of a really great outline, but you could do a quick Google search with someone to explore common values if they're not familiar with it. There's a lot of handouts on values and supporting someone with identifying those values. So, things to consider. And taking time to list the things you most value and see if the hoarding behavior is connected to that value or if it's going against that value. If I'm someone who values really being organized and I'm staring at my desk right now and it is covered with every color sticky note, notebook, textbook, random pieces of art, crinkled up papers and sticky notes, pens, water bottles. I mean, there's everything on my desk right now. That might not align with my value of being organized. So, trying to find a way to explore if I work on this, I might have a cleaner space. I might feel more comfortable at my desk. I might feel more motivated to engage in work at my desk. And it might ultimately make me feel better. So, all of those things in many ways connect. So, helping someone to identify their bigger value and how it connects to their current behavior or how it goes against their current behavior, and really helping them to live a more values-driven life. So, when motivation and values align, there's a handout that we share by starting to recognize those changes by visualizing them. So here's a handout that helps you guide someone through a clutter visualization. So you might walk them through this. So the first part is look around the room and notice the clutter. Turn slowly so that you can see all of it. Maybe taking some time to sit with that, soak it in. How uncomfortable did you feel while looking around this room? Maybe having this person select, well, it was really uncomfortable, or it wasn't that uncomfortable. Maybe it was a 7. What feelings were you having while looking around this room? What do you think for you all are some of the feelings that come up when you notice the clutter in the space? Again, whether for yourself or someone you're working with, channeling some of those feelings. What are some of those feeling words that come up when you look around at the clutter in the room? And thank you all. I just saw Earl put both of those worksheets in there. If you just click that, you'll be able to drop down into finding that clutter visualization and unclutter visualization. So, for example, someone might feel overwhelmed. They might actually feel a lot of joy and happiness looking around. And then having them to identify some of their thoughts and beliefs. What were some of the things that you were thinking about or things that you believe about yourself when you're looking around this room? And then the unclutter visualization. So now visualize this room with the clutter gone. Maybe you prompt them to close their eyes or look down a little bit. Imagining cleared surfaces and floors, tabletops without piles, and uncluttered floors with only rugs and furniture. And again, kind of, I mean, really using this as a perhaps meditative script for them, recognizing, for now, don't worry about where the things have gone. Just imagine the room without clutter. And then exploring with them, how uncomfortable did you feel while imagining this room uncluttered? And having them select a number on the scale from 0 being no discomfort, 10 being severe discomfort. And then same thing. What thoughts and feelings were you having? What was coming up for you? Maybe there was fear, maybe there was peace, maybe there was excitement, maybe there was sadness. And then having this person imagine what they can do in this room now that it is not cluttered. So picture how pleasant this room will feel when you have arranged it in the way that you want it. And then again, taking some time to have this person describe what's coming up for them. What do they notice in their body? How is it making them feel even doing this visualization, even if we haven't removed anything? And that could be a really strong indicator, again, of their motivation, their readiness. If there's a lot of perhaps excitement, joy, maybe more quote unquote positive feelings, maybe this person has perhaps a greater level of motivation. But if this person is feeling a lot of sadness, sorrow, despair, frustration, worry, fear about letting go of these items as you're doing this visualization, then again, that's quite telling of where they're at again. Sure. Okay. So as we're getting towards the end, a few other items that we wanted to point out. There is a handout that includes a contract with yourself. So it's almost like a pinky promise to yourself. It's recognizing that people tend to stick with a plan when they make a clear and formal declaration of intent. So you are writing something out, maybe signing an agreement with yourself, maybe making up again. I like the pinky promise to yourself. And so having this person really commit to doing something, maybe it helps to write it out, give another person a copy. This doesn't mean that if they don't do it, that something horrible happens or that maybe you won't work with them anymore or you won't care about them anymore. It's more of a how can I contract with myself, commit to myself, stick with a plan for myself that I know will work for me, not for you or anyone else, but this is something that I believe that I can really dedicate myself to. So here is a picture of that contract. So you might help this person if it's, again, something important to them. It doesn't mean that things will change if they don't commit to this promise, but sometimes people really enjoy having something concrete. So it says, I, fill in the blank, make this promise to myself. I will work on my hoarding problem to the best of my ability. I will make beating hoarding a priority in my life, and I will work hard not to let other things distract me from this goal. I will work on the problem actively for at least, let's say, 5 minutes, or 30 minutes, or 1 hour per day, once a week. I will praise and reward myself when I work hard on hoarding. I will not beat myself up when I make mistakes, but I will renew my efforts. So, kind of recognizing that change is not linear, and that if something gets in the way, there's a hiccup, there's a bump in the road, that this person will continue to renew their efforts, will continue to pick up where they left off from, and not let it derail their progress. And then they might fill out other promises they'd like to make to themselves. So maybe this person wants to write out something there specifically, again, that keeps them more accountable. The last part here is helping this person and helping others with their motivation. So here might be some things to support someone when low motivation, which we recognize is quite common, and we know a confrontational approach does not work. The goal is not to tell someone what to do, to give them advice and do it for them, to get frustrated when things don't work, but we want to be mindful of these three key assumptions. So helping them recognize that ambivalence is normal, that people don't just make changes happen overnight, that this person will take some time to really make an intentional change happen. People have the right to make their own choices, so you have the right to choose how you want to go about this, whether you want to remove one item or 3 items, whether you want to sort 1 item today and none tomorrow, that is totally up to you, and I'm here to support you along that journey. Nothing will happen until the person is ready to participate. So there is, again, no one is here forcing them to do something that brings them a lot of distress, but to at the same time normalize that what they're feeling makes a lot of sense. It's normal, and supporting them along that journey. Some conversational pointers, again, that we like to think about that we've covered in different sessions so far. You might show empathy using open-ended questions. We gave some examples of really great, thoughtful questions to ask. It's also important to summarize your understanding of what was said. And this can happen at the beginning, the middle, the end of a conversation. You might reflect back the meaning of what someone is telling you. So instead of jumping right away to another question, take time to reflectively respond. Show them that you heard them. Recognize how hard it must be to even think about decluttering or to think about discarding. I can tell how much this is bringing up for you. And at the same time, providing compliments, praise, reinforcement, appreciation when any kind of small change does happen. Don't argue. So avoid being very directive, warning, threatening, advice giving. We also at the same time recognize how sometimes the system is more powerful than we are, and sometimes this person might be at risk for getting evicted. And that doesn't mean that we have to be that way. We don't need to warn or threaten or persuade them or moralize or preach or judge or blame the behavior. But again, as someone mentioned, we want to respect their autonomy. So ask about their goals and values. Ask if their behavior fits with those values and goals. So think about, again, if someone really values friendship and they haven't seen their friends in months, maybe pointing that out. I know that friends and a social support system is really important to you. And I know you haven't seen them in a while. And I'm wondering if that's because maybe there's not enough space in your home right now. Could that be a possibility? And maybe this person's like, yeah, it's really uncomfortable and embarrassing, and I don't even like to think about it, but I really want to see my friends and I just can't. And then setting limits, decide what you can and cannot tolerate and what you can or cannot do. When we notice ourselves working harder than someone, that is what leads oftentimes to burnout. So, really working alongside someone, finding that middle path of I'm going to be here with you, I'm going to work with you. I can't do for you, but I can do with you and alongside you. Okay. As we're getting to our final end here, we want to share a learning application. So we encourage you to take some time to try an activity. We have a few different options here. So you can do any of the handouts, whether that's comparing your perceptions to others versus yourself. So do others see this problem in the same way that you do? Maybe identifying the personal goals worksheet. So how do those goals and values align or clash? And then another option could be that clutter and unclutter visualization. So that might be you perhaps prompting someone or reading that for someone that you're working with or trying it yourself. And we'll ask you to let us know what was helpful and what was challenging in the next time that we see each other. Next time, Earl will be here covering Chapter 8, Reducing Hoarding. You are already registered for that. Before you go, we want to share our evaluation. So this is totally anonymous. Thanks so much for being here. We do appreciate your engagement and involvement throughout this presentation. We want to thank you. We appreciate your time, attention, and participation. Today's webinar was hosted by DBHR through the Washington Healthcare Authority. We'd like to remind you that the slides and a link to the recording of this session and a wealth of other resources will be available in a follow-up email. For more questions, here is the newsletter. There should be an email sent at the very end, and actually I think since we're not sharing all resources in the email, we are posting, or Washington is posting the webinars on the FCS channel. So in case you missed it, Earl had just put the PDF to the link in the chat. And I saw the question at the end. I'll just share this slide here. Are these skills usable and helpful for someone who has a hoarding history, who is moving from one hoarded apartment to a new fresh apartment without taking anything as a way to navigate and maybe prevent? Yeah, sure. Prevention is a skill in itself. If we can support someone in practicing ways to behave differently or to think differently about our behaviors, that could be really valuable. Sometimes it is exploring and maybe noticing how those behaviors are showing up. But absolutely, yeah, let's have a conversation around our goals and values. Let's talk about how those things connect and how they clash. Let's make sure that in this new place we are very values driven to the best of our abilities. So thank you for that question. Okay. Thank you again all for being here. We hope to see you all soon. You're so welcome. Here's the evaluation again. Earl will be back with you next time, rocking and rolling. And we will see you all again soon. Thank you so much and take good care.